Meet John. John is 55 years old, and last Friday was his final day of work. His coworkers assumed he'd won the lottery, or inherited money, or sold a business nobody knew about. He did none of those things. John never earned more than $54,000 a year in his entire life. No promotions into management, no stock options, no side hustle empire. And yet his retirement account closed that Friday at $1,766,000. That's not a typo, and it's not a miracle. It's arithmetic that almost nobody actually runs. His coworker Carla earned $71,000 a year, 31% more than John ever made. Carla is still working, and she'll be working at 65. Same office, same benefits package, same 401k plan sitting in the same building. One of them retired a decade early with $1.7 million. The other one can't stop asking what she missed. Today, we're going to run John's numbers, year by year, dollar by dollar, because the exact math is more shocking than the headline. Here's why this matters to you, whatever your paycheck says. Northwestern Mutual's 2025 study found Americans believe they need $1,260,000 to retire comfortably. Meanwhile, the median retirement account for Americans at age 55 holds just $185,000. That's a gap of more than $1 million, and it's growing every year. Most people stare at that gap and conclude the game is rigged for high earners. John's file says otherwise. His lifetime salary never cracked $55,000, yet he beat the magic number by $500,000. The difference wasn't luck, and it wasn't genius stock picking. He never bought a single individual stock in 32 years. And before you assume this window has closed, look at the current data. Fidelity reports the average 401k savings rate just hit a record high near 14%. The number of 401k millionaires sits at an all-time record, and their average tenure tells one story. Decades, not jackpots. The machine John used is running right now, in millions of accounts, mostly owned by people you'd never suspect. The difference was 5 specific decisions made at 5 specific moments that anyone earning an ordinary paycheck can copy. 2 of them cost him nothing at all. One of them, most people have never even heard of, and it's the only reason he could touch his money at 55 without a penalty. Miss that one rule, and the IRS takes 10% off the top. And stay to the end, because the biggest advantage John had is the one everyone pitied him for. It's the reason his flat, unremarkable dead-end salary quietly beat almost every 6-figure earner in America. Here's what the data shows. Let's rewind 32 years and keep this fair. John started work at 23 as a maintenance planner for a mid-sized utility company. His starting salary was $34,000 a year. His raises averaged 3%, and they stopped completely at age 40, when his pay hit $54,000 and flatlined forever. No bonuses, no overtime windfalls, no inheritance. Down the hall sat Carla, hired the same month at $38,000. Carla was better at office politics, and her raises averaged 4%, peaking at $71,000. On paper, Carla won every single year of their careers. Their lifetime earnings tell the story. Carla out-earned John by more than $400,000. Now open their retirement accounts, because this is where the story flips. In his first week, John filled out one form, directing 15% of every paycheck into the company 401k. At $34,000 a year, that was $425 a month. It hurt, and he did it anyway. His father, a proud man who kept cash in envelopes, called the stock market legalized gambling. He told John to buy a bigger house instead, because a house is something you can touch. John kept the small house and kept the form. That 5-minute decision at 23 turns out to be worth more than every raise he ever received combined. Carla chose 0%, telling herself she'd start once the student loans were gone. The loans ended at 29, then a car payment took their place at 30. Then a bigger apartment, then a wedding, then a bigger car. Carla finally started saving at 35, at 6% of her salary, 12 years behind John at a third of his rate. The company matched contributions at 4.5 cents per dollar of salary, free money printed into every paycheck. John captured every dollar of that match from his very first month. Carla left 12 full years of it on the table, roughly $28,000 in matching funds, vaporized. Both of them had the exact same investment menu, the same index funds, the same fees. The menu offered 23 funds, and John read exactly one line of it. He picked the S&P 500 index fund, expense ratio 0.04%, and never looked at the menu again. Not because he was lazy, but because he'd read that most. Professional managers failed to beat that boring fund over 15 years. Neither he nor Carla ever picked a winning stock because neither one of them ever tried. And understand, Carla wasn't reckless, not by any normal definition. She paid every bill on time, kept a solid credit score, and carried less card debt than most of the office. Every single spending decision she made sounded reasonable in the moment it was made. A reliable car for a commuter, a house in a better school district, a truck she'd earned. That's what makes her chart so unsettling. It wasn't built by mistakes. It was built by defaults. John's chart was built by one decision that removed all future decisions. The money left his paycheck before he ever saw it, before it could become a restaurant, a lease, or a kitchen upgrade. He never once transferred money into savings in 32 years. There was nothing to transfer because nothing arrived unsaved. 2 careers, 1 office, 1 retirement plan, 1 decade of difference at the finish line. Let's open the math. Here's what nobody tells you about the first $100,000. It is, by a wide margin, the slowest and most discouraging money you will ever make. John saved $425 every single month for his entire 20s. After 2 full years, his balance was $14,122. After 7 years of showing up, sacrificing, and never missing a contribution, he had $68,085. Run the numbers on that. 7 years of discipline, and the market had added barely $20,000. His coworker, Trevor, called the whole thing pointless. And honestly, the chart agreed with him. Trevor kept his money in a checking account where he could see it, touch it, and spend it. For those first years, Trevor's visible pile and John's invisible one looked insultingly similar. That's the trap of the first decade. The discipline is maximal and the evidence is minimal. You're paying full price for a machine that hasn't switched on yet. At this stage, compounding is nearly invisible because there's nothing big enough to compound. John crossed $100,000 at age 33, a full 10 years after he started. 10 years for the first $100,000. Hold that number because the last $100,000 will take him 7 weeks. Charlie Munger said getting the first $100,000 is the hardest part, and he wasn't exaggerating. The first decade isn't about growth at all. It's about building the engine that growth will eventually drive. Most people quit during exactly these years because the math looks broken. The math isn't broken, it's loading. Here's what actually happens with the employer match, and it should make you angry. John's company matched 4.5% of salary, every paycheck automatically. Over 32 years, that match deposited $69,120 into John's account. He did nothing to earn it except fill out one form at 23. But the deposits are the small part of the story. Invested in compounding for 3 decades, that match money grew into roughly $340,000 of his final balance. One form, a fifth of his entire fortune. Now look at the national numbers, because John is the exception. Studies estimate American workers forfeit billions in unclaimed matching dollars every single year, mostly by contributing below the match threshold. That is a 100% instant return declined. People will drive across town to save 40 cents a gallon on gas. Then they'll decline free money at a 100% return because the form looks boring. Carla skipped 12 years of match, about $28,000 in deposits. Compounded to age 55, her skipped match cost her over $130,000. Most people believe the match is a perk. Run the numbers. It's a second salary that only pays people who ask. And the ask takes 5 minutes, once on a form your HR department is begging you to complete. If your employer matches and you're not capturing all of it, stop this video and fix that first. Everything else we discussed today is optional. That one isn't. At 31, John got a phone call that could have quietly cost him $301,000. A financial advisor, friend of a friend, nice suit, invited him to lunch. The pitch was smooth. Professionally managed funds, active strategies, a personal touch. The fee was small, the advisor said, just 1% a year. 1% sounds like nothing, and that's exactly why it works so well. Here's the math the advisor didn't put on the table. John's index funds returned about 10% a year over his career. Cut that to 9% after the 1% fee and run both timelines forward. Same salary, same savings rate, same 32 years, same everything but the fee. At 10%, John retires with $1,766,000. At 9%, he retires with $1,465,000. That tiny 1% fee would have consumed $301,000, 17% of his entire fortune. Not because the advisor was evil, but because fees compound exactly as ruthlessly as gains do. John said no thank you, drove home in his 9-year-old Corolla, and changed nothing. His entire portfolio for 32 straight years was a boring S&P 500 index fund charging 0.04%. He never beat the market, not once, in 3 decades. He never trailed it either. That handshake he declined was the single most profitable lunch of his life. Years later, John ran into the same advisor at a conference and thanked him sincerely. The pitch had forced him to run the fee math for the first time. To be clear, good advice has real value, especially near retirement, when one mistake can undo a decade. But paying 1% of your assets every year for someone to buy the same index fund you could buy yourself? Run the numbers before you shake that hand. Now, for the part of John's story everyone gets backwards. His salary flatlined at $54,000 when he was 40, and people pitied him for it. Here's what the pity missed. John's expenses flatlined too, and that changed everything. There's a name for what happens to most raises: lifestyle creep. The raise arrives, the spending rises to meet it, and the savings rate never moves. Carla lived it in real time, and her budget tells the story. At $52,000, she leased a new SUV for $460 a month. At $63,000, she upgraded to a house whose payment ate the entire raise. At $71,000, a salesman at the dealership showed her a $58,000 truck. He told her she'd earned it, and her trade-in made it only $740 a month. She signed in 20 minutes. Every raise Carla ever received was spent before the next one arrived. Her income rose 87% over her career. Her savings rate barely moved from 6%. Meanwhile, John's oldest friend, a millennial coworker named Trevor, teased him relentlessly about the Corolla. John kept driving it, kept the same 3-bedroom house, kept the same vacations. His spending at 54 looked almost identical to his spending at 40. So when the raises stopped, John never felt it because his lifestyle had never inflated. The flat salary everyone pitied was quietly functioning as armor. You can't suffer lifestyle creep when your lifestyle has nowhere to creep. Most people believe a bigger paycheck builds wealth. The data says the gap between paycheck and lifestyle builds wealth, and nothing else does. Here's the test that proves it. Picture a household earning $150,000 and spending $150,000. Their wealth-building number is 0, and 0 compounds into exactly 0. John's $54,000 salary with a $2,800 gap beats them every single year, forever. The scoreboard never once asks what you earn. It only asks what you keep. Here's the decision that separated a comfortable retirement from an early one. At 40, when his salary froze at $54,000, John made a strange move. Since the company stopped giving him raises, he gave one to himself, inside the account. He pushed his contribution rate from 15% up to 20%. In dollars, that's $900 a month instead of $675, a difference of $225. That's a car payment. That's the exact car payment Carla was making, actually. At 40, John's balance stood at $322,073, respectable but not remarkable. Those extra contribution dollars, arriving during his 15 highest compounding years, detonated. By 45, his balance hit $599,272. By 50, it crossed $1,046,000. John became a millionaire at age 50 on a $54,000 salary, and nobody at work had any idea. He was at that moment one of a record number of 401k millionaires that Fidelity now tracks, most of whom earned ordinary salaries for decades. Now the painful comparison, because you need to see the cost of waiting. His neighbor Diana ran John's exact playbook. Same percentages, same funds, same discipline. One difference, Diana started at 33 instead of 23. Her balance at 55 came to $788,000. Identical behavior, 10 missing years, and the price was $977,000. Read that again. The 10 years Diana skipped cost her nearly $1 million. Not because she saved fewer dollars, but because her dollars had less time. Time is not a factor in this equation. Time is the equation. And notice what the extra 5% actually required from John's daily life. He skipped one restaurant dinner a week and kept the Corolla 2 extra years. That's the entire lifestyle cost of the $225 that finished the fortune. Nobody builds wealth in dramatic gestures. It's built in 225 increments that nobody at the party ever notices. Here's the part of the story that separates spreadsheets from real life. John's 32 working years contained 3 full-scale market catastrophes. In the first one, his account lost 38% of its value in a single year. He was 37, and $60,000 of his money evaporated in 14 months. Trevor sold everything near the bottom, swearing the system was finished. The financial news ran graphics of red arrows for months on end. Carla stopped her contributions entirely, waiting for things to feel safe again. Waiting to feel safe is the most expensive feeling in finance. Here's what John did during all 3 crashes. Absolutely nothing. Same $675 leaving his paycheck, same index fund, same autopilot. Which means every paycheck during a crash bought shares at 20, 30, 38% off. The crash everyone remembers as his disaster was mathematically his discount. Run the numbers on missing the recovery because they're brutal. Studies of this exact period show that missing just the 10 best market days cuts a portfolio's final value roughly in half. And those best days cluster inside crashes, almost always within weeks of the worst ones. Sell during the panic, and you're guaranteed to be standing outside when the 10 most profitable days of your life arrive. John captured every single one of them by being too boring to leave. His disaster years, 37, 44, and 52, are the exact years his future fortune was purchased on sale. Fear sells at the bottom. Autopilot buys there. Let's talk about the last 5 years, because this is where the math turns surreal. From 50 to 55, John contributed $150 of his own money. His balance grew by $795.02. His money earned 10 times what he did in the final stretch. In his last 2 years alone, growth outran his entire salary twice over. Remember his first 7 years when the market added barely $20,000? The identical strategy was now adding $20,000 in a bad month. Nothing changed except the size of the base. Compounding isn't a staircase, it's an avalanche, and the final years carry almost all the snow. This is also why quitting early is so catastrophically expensive. Half of John's final fortune, roughly $900,000, materialized after his 49th birthday. A teller at his bank once suggested he move some money somewhere safer at 50. Park it in a savings account earning 4%, she said, and protect it. Run those numbers. $1,046,000, growing at 4% instead of 10% for 5 years. That safe move would have ended the avalanche and cost him over $400,000. John smiled, said no thank you, and let the snow keep falling. The final balance sheet reads like a magic trick. John contributed $272,900 over 32 years. His employer added $69,720. The market's compounding added $423,000, more than 80% of the total. He didn't build a fortune. He built a machine, and the machine built the fortune. There's one more contributor to John's fortune, and it's the one nobody thanks: the tax code. Every dollar John sent to his 401k went in before taxes touched it. At his income, that meant roughly 22 cents of every saved dollar was money the IRS agreed to wait for. His $900 monthly contribution only shrank his take-home pay by about $700. Run the numbers across a full year. Saving $10,800 cost him roughly $8,400 of actual lifestyle. The other $2,400 was tax deferral, a silent partner matching him every payday. Over 3 decades, that deferral quietly financed more than $70,000 of his contributions. Money that would have gone to April 15th went to age 55 instead. And here's the elegant ending. In retirement, John controls his own tax bracket. Withdrawing $7,600 a year as his only income, his effective federal rate lands near 10%. He deferred taxes at 22 cents on the dollar, and he's paying them back at about 10. That spread, deferring high and paying low, is worth over $100,000 across his retirement. Most people think the 401k is a savings account with extra steps. It's actually a deal with the government, and John read the terms. One question should be nagging you right now. Retirement accounts lock your money until 59 and a half. So how is John spending his at 55? Withdraw early, and the IRS normally takes a 10% penalty off the top. On a $68,000 withdrawal, that's $6,800 gone every single year. This is where John's final move comes in, and it's called the Rule of 55. Buried in the tax code sits a legal exception most workers have never heard of. Leave your job in or after the calendar year you turn 55, and your current employer's 401k unlocks, penalty-free. No 10% haircut, no waiting until 59 and a half, no exotic loopholes. That's the entire reason John retired in the year he turned 55, and not 1 year sooner. The rule has teeth, though, so listen carefully. It only covers the 401k at the job you're leaving, not your IRAs. Roll that money into an IRA, and the unlock disappears instantly. Thousands of early retirees learn that detail one transfer too late. John also solved the problem the Rule of 55 doesn't touch: health insurance. Medicare doesn't start until 65, so he priced a marketplace plan into his budget years in advance. Roughly $9,000 a year, planned for, not discovered. Early retirement fails on forgotten line items far more often than on market crashes. Now run John's retirement income. Using the classic 4% withdrawal rate, $766,000 produces about $70,600 a year. Sit with that number for a second. His retirement paycheck is $16,000 bigger than the largest salary he ever earned. John got a 30% raise for quitting. The man who never made more than $54,000 now out-earns his own career forever. And because he only withdraws 4% while the portfolio keeps growing, the balance is projected to rise through his 60s. He'll likely leave more behind than he ever touched. That's not a retirement plan. That's a perpetual motion machine with a pension attached. Now for the twist, because everything you just heard hides a bigger truth. We told this story as John versus Carla, discipline versus lifestyle creep. But study the numbers long enough and a stranger conclusion surfaces. John's greatest financial asset wasn't his savings rate, his index fund, or even his 32 years. It was the thing everyone pitied him for: the salary that never grew. Think about what a flat paycheck actually did for him. It froze his lifestyle in place automatically with zero willpower required. Carla needed discipline every single time a raise hit her account, and the raises kept coming. John needed discipline exactly once at 23 when he set the percentage. After that, the system ran itself because there was never new money to mismanage. Researchers call this friction, and John's life accidentally had none. History backs this up with a vengeance. Ronald Redd, a Vermont janitor and gas station attendant, died with $8,000 in stock, not despite the small paycheck. The small paycheck was the fence that kept his lifestyle from wandering. Meanwhile, surveys keep finding that a meaningful share of six-figure households live paycheck to paycheck. Some studies put it at roughly a third of households earning over $100,000. A third, earning double John's salary, holding a fraction of his wealth, and feeling broke on the first of every month. Income didn't save them, because income was never the variable that mattered. Their raises were real, and their lifestyles ate everyone, on schedule. With a smile, the gap is the variable. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only number compounding ever sees. So flip the pity around, one final time. Every year Carla's raises arrived, she faced a fresh negotiation with her own appetite and lost. John's appetite never got an offer, so it never learned to want more. His constraint did the work his willpower never had to do. John didn't out-earn anyone. He outweighted everyone. That's the sentence to carry out of this video. A $54,000 salary with a locked lifestyle beat a $71,000 salary with a leaking one by $354,000. At the retirement party, Carla finally asked John what his secret was. He told her the truth, and she didn't believe him, because the truth is unbearably boring. One form at 23, one raise to himself at 40, one rule at 55. 32 years of doing nothing dramatic, on purpose, in public, where anyone could have copied it. Your paycheck is not your ceiling. Your spending is. So where does this leave you, sitting wherever you're sitting, earning whatever you earn? Maybe you're 28, like John's new coworker, Maya, who heard this story at his retirement party. Maya earns $47,000 and opened her phone that night. She set her contribution to 15%, captured the full match, picked the boring index fund. Her math at 55 projects passed $500,000 on a salary smaller than John's. Or maybe you're 40, staring at a late start, doing Diana's math instead. Fine, Diana still retired with $788,000, which beats the median American by $600,000. The avalanche starts whenever you start it. The worst possible move is concluding you're too late and ordering the $58,000 truck. 10 years from now, you will either have Diana's chart or Carla's, and today decides which. And if you're wondering about Roth conversions, bridge accounts, or squeezing out at 52 instead, that's a completely different conversation. But for now, the next time someone tells you that you can't build wealth on an ordinary salary, ask them one question. What's your gap? Because the gap between earning and spending is the only number that matters. Not the salary, not the title, not the market's mood this month. Run the numbers. And if this video showed you math nobody ever put in front of you, subscribe to Wealth POV. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every day. No hustle culture, no shame, no $58,000 trucks. Just the arithmetic and what it quietly says about your next 30 years. Make the decision that matches your reality, not someone else's sales pitch.